Hello, everyone. I'm Joe, aka Eldridge Homer.
I like the sound of that.
And I am Bill, aka Lost Star Wars.
The Force is strong in this one.
And we are the Trade Federation, the only podcast dedicated to top Star Wars card trader.
Also now available on RetroZap.com.
This is a big episode because we are recording 12 hours or so before the beginning of Week 10, the final week for the first part of the marathon sets. And tomorrow is not only the first of the Week 10s, it's also Vintage Thursday. So how do you think that's going to go down? Is it just going to be madness?
I'm nervous. I don't even know what to expect. I've heard some people predicting that the card count is going to be drastically lower on some of these Week 10s. I've heard, just predictions that I have no idea. I really have no idea what to expect. Or is it just going to be kind of like just like another regular day? I don't know.
I think it's hard to tell. I don't know. I would be confused if so many people were so nuts about tomorrow. Although I guess if you really wanted to trade that vintage right away, maybe that's why a lot of people will be there slamming the servers or whatever. But I would think that pretty much anybody who doesn't have Han by tomorrow is not gonna get him in time. So I don't know that there will be too many people thinking, oh, I might still pull this thing off, unless they're willing to hit up eBay or something. I mean, or if you're gonna pull maybe a black mint sometime in the next week and trade it at the last minute. But do you think many Hans are going to be changing hands in this last week?
They could. I mean, it all depends too on how far away the award is going to be given out. So, the last card, the 10th card, will come out tomorrow, and then it's a Thursday card, maybe like a Sunday night or a Monday award given out. I don't know, but that's a couple days, and if this new card is pretty low, and all these people with multiple vintage Hans who have been saving them up, is this the week, or do they hang on to those until the very end, until like October, and then trade them then? Because they're hanging on to them for a reason. Either they're going to sell them on eBay, which if you're going to do that, I would imagine up until Week 10 is the best time. Or you wait it out again until Week 30 or some time much later on, because a lot of people aren't going to be looking for Han anymore once Week 10 is over. So I do think some Hans will be trading hands.
Do you think that we'll see a big drop-off as far as the worth of vintage Han? Will people be like, well, he's no longer part of like the current marathon, the current 10, 11 through 20 or whatever. So do you think people will kind of backburner him and think like, oh, maybe I'll get something great and trade for him before the 30 weeks, but it's no longer urgent?
I think that he'll still be pretty valuable. You might see a drop in terms of monetary value if you're looking at eBay prices, but you're definitely going to see after Week 10, you're going to see a drop in the number of people who are trying to get a vintage Han. Although maybe there's just the prestige of it. It's been called the Black Lotus of Star Wars Trader, and it could just still have that appeal. I don't know. All speculation.
Yeah, it'll be pretty interesting to see. I want to hear from each of us. I'll go first. What we think are the card count and the odds on the vintage. My big guess is I'm going to go with 1750 and 1 in 80. Maybe that's nuts, but that's my guess. What do you think?
That's happened before, so it's not too crazy. I almost think they're gonna. For some reason, something tells me they're either gonna stick with. It was a very successful week last week, I think, in terms of the way we already talked about this on last episode, but the way in which the user experience was so much better last Thursday, and that's because the card count was higher, and it takes some of that pressure off where you start to get this new lower card. So I think it's either going to stay above and stay at 2,500 or 2,250 or something like that, or if they're looking at it from a different way and they're trying to sort of have another card that has that Han prestige, they could drop it even lower and make it like 1,000 or 750 or something crazy like that. And I've seen other people saying that some other sets might do that. I don't know if they would do it for the Han because it's just going to crash all the servers again. But yeah, who knows? I don't know. My prediction is they kind of keep it the same as last week.
Huh? It'll be interesting to watch. What about? Do you think it's just going to be a week of pure madness for all of the different Week 10 inserts? I mean, this week it's going to be more nerve-wracking than ever because I think if you pull, say, an extra even Galactic Moments or Bounty or something, you know that the people who are looking for that thing are going to be desperate to get it before the marathon comes. I think there's going to be some really lopsided deals going on with some of these Week 10s, especially right at first.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there's lopsided deals every single day. Every single one that releases. Some people just have to have it immediately, and they don't have the credits on hand, I guess, and they want to acquire that card right away, so they'll give up a bunch to get it. So, yeah, that could just be intensified with a little bit of panic for that final week, that final card. And again, it's going to come down to numbers. If the numbers go up or match some of the higher numbers in the sets, we had some lower numbers last week on a lot of the sets. But if, say, Galactic Moments is 5,000 or 6,000 and Wide Vision is 4,000, I don't think that crazy high value will last more than a day, sort of like normal,
Right. I'm wondering, this is like a quick question before we sort of move on from Week 10 speculation is, do you think, like a lot of people make it out like a lot of the inserts that come out now are worth less or whatever because the count kind of keeps climbing a little bit for a lot of them. And I'm wondering if is that because of they just keep getting more and more users and they don't want to just say, well, we're still only sticking with only 2,000 people can get these, like Top's Choice has sort of slowly crept up. Is that just so that as the user base grows and with the addition of Android people, more people have a shot at it? Because I feel like a lot of people are going, well, this is a 3,000 and that was a 2,000, so it's not worth as much, which makes sense. But I think it would be nuts to just keep all inserts at like a 2,000 level or something with all the new people, coming into the game as time goes on.
I think the first week cards really affect the value of all of these later cards, and the later cards aren't valued so much because there's so few people who actually have a chance at getting the Marathon Award for Week 10. So because it's so hard to get, say, a Greedo bounty, every other bounty, especially the more recent ones, even if they're the same count, which some of the later ones are close, right? Like this last week's bounty was it 4,000, right?
I think so. That sounds right.
I'd have to look it up. But and what was Greedo?
He was, I think, 3,000. If I am thinking about it.
3,000. So not too much of a difference,
Right. Yeah, it's not huge.
But the fact that it's so hard to get a Greedo comparatively means that there's just that many fewer people, that many more Bushes that are just not involved in the chase because there's only so many awards, and people hoard those week ones. People collect them, and there's far more people with 5 to 10 week ones that they keep for value for trades and for sort of trade power than there are people with 10 week 8s. I that's my theory, and that's what I see more of that. When I'm making trades with some of these bigger heavy hitters. But the funny thing will be the fact that people are going to be listening to this on Monday, right? A lot of people will be listening Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, well, some of this will have gone down by then.
It'll almost all have gone down at that point, and all of our speculation will probably be laughable at that point.
Maybe we'll be really ahead of the curve. Maybe a lot of people will be like, "Holy cow, they're geniuses."
Yeah. Oh,
I don't know.
I nailed some last week.
That's true.
I made some good predictions last week. Yeah, I predicted the 2,500 kinda for vintage, for the most recent vintage, and What was another one that I predicted? Kanan. I predicted that the award would be for Rebels would be Kanan. Not on the show. I think it was on the sub in a conversation, and I had based it on the fact that it was the Inquisitor, and it would be his counterpart, the guy he fights, you know. And there was one other one that I can't remember.
Yeah, I think you pretty much are ahead of the curve most of the time. It seems like if you make a prediction about something, or you say, I think this card's going to be hot or whatever, I'm right there in the fan feed trying to get it.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not. But you know what? The other one was the card art, the classic card art. I predicted that it would be 8,000, and a couple people kind of laughed at me when they were at about 2,500, and I was going on the assumption that they would release like the other card arts when they came over to iOS, and that it would be Friday, the R2 pack, and it would run for the whole weekend. And I was kind of just looking at numbers. I was looking at the numbers from the Chewy because it had dropped. So I added the Chewy number to the 2,500 number and came to roughly like 7,000 to 8,000. And it totally didn't go down that way. So my reasoning was totally wrong, but the number was almost dead on. And I'm not sure, they might be releasing more packs, but I don't know. But it's like 79.50 or something.
Yeah, I saw that. I got a little chuckle out of that when I was looking at some of the classic art ones earlier. Is there anything else about Week 10 speculation you want to make before we move on to cards that I'm betting are going to have counts similar to card art?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, I don't think I'm going to make any more calls and make a fool of myself. So let's talk just quickly about the new Dark Side inserts that were released just a couple of hours ago as of this recording. What was your initial reaction to seeing those?
I think they're really cool looking cards, and I love that they're playing around with the way the award will be determined again. They did this a little bit before, and they do it with the fan choice every week, right? It's like a cool kind of let the people determine what it's going to be. And I'm sure by the time people listen, they'll know what it is, but in case they don't, whatever card of these new 10 Dark Side characters is traded the most, whichever one gets the most trade offers, I think it is, will be the one that there's a variant award of, which is really cool, I think.
Yeah, I like anything where they kind of play around with it or whatever. The Garandan cards were a good example of where they had the light side and dark side. I'm surprised they haven't done more with that. In fact, when they first said that these dark side inserts were coming out, I thought, I wonder if this is because I chose dark side and people who chose light side are going to have light side cards and we're going to have to trade them around or whatever to try and complete the sets. I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that in the future too.
Yeah, I like the Garandon thing was really cool. These they run for a couple weeks, right? What is the date? May 27th? Is that what it was?
The 27th, and it seems like they're not going to be going away. It seems like the pack is just going to be in there solid from now until then. So there's a good chance that these things are going to reach pretty high counts, I would think.
Yeah, I would say so. And that's fine. I love the fact, and I mentioned this last week, I love the fact that the classic art, such an awesome design, and it's classic and nostalgic, and so many people can have those cards, especially because there's no award. It makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, I'm totally fine with there being sets like fan choice that kind of, I mean, not everyone can have them because there's a lot more than say 8,000, or what is the highest card art? I think it's like 9,000 something. The Han.
Yeah, but, Han I think might be over 10,000.
Yeah, it's close.
One thing I really like about these things is that even though there's the two variants, there's the granite and then there's the black that's only in the master access packs or whatever. So like there'll probably be pretty high counts on the granite and everything. But then for people who are like, I only like inserts with low counts or whatever, the blacks will probably still be fairly low. I mean, I would imagine you'd only see a fraction, maybe 2,500 to 3,000 of those by the end of the period, or do you think those will go nuts too?
I think it depends on the cost of those master packs. Did you happen to ask anyone today what the cost was?
I didn't. I tried to look for it because I thought about going for it, but then I couldn't find it, and I didn't bother in the end.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's all going to depend on the cost. If they're 10,000, Yeah, they'll be, or higher. I would imagine they'll be pretty low. But if it's 5,000, they could go kind of high. What's the percent? What's the odds on that? 1 in 50. So
yeah,
it's
compared
not
to 1 in 20, I think, for the regular ones.
right. I mean, the odds are tougher, but they're not the worst odds we've ever seen.
And if I understand the transmission right, it looks like the award will be different too. Like there'll be one award for granite, and then it won't just be necessarily the same card for the black. It'll take into account specifically black trades.
Oh wow, that's interesting. So that black variant could be a really interesting card.
Yeah, it's going to be neat. I think it'll be cool to see. I'm excited to watch it as it goes.
I guess it's the lettering that's the difference, but the border is not too much different. So I'm looking at Darth Maul right now, and the granite has basically a gray border with gray lettering, and it's got Darth Maul in the image, Tops in the top left, and Star Wars in the top right in gray, and then the black one has a darker gray border, and then the lettering is red. The Darth Maul, the Tops, and the Star Wars lettering is red.
Oh, nice.
So looking at the numbers, the granite Darth Maul is at 5:02 right now, and it's 8:30 p.m. I forget what time it came out. It was probably like 5, so maybe like 3 hours ago. And the black is at 34. So it's going to be in the hundreds. The black is going to be in the hundreds, I would imagine. They might cool off though. They'll definitely cool off, obviously, in terms of number of packs bought per day. And I would imagine a lot of people will hang out and wait till it's pretty close to the final day and see where the number is and then buy packs, which is kind of what I might do.
It's a weird time. I only had a handful of credits left, so I just tossed some down on it, and I got I made one really great trade too with a Redditor, I think, with Sinquel. I'm not exactly sure how to say his name, but I had an extra of something. I don't even remember. I think it was like a wide vision. And I just said, I don't want this thing. Who's got some granites? And he gave me 2 of them. So I have 4 of them already, just from cracking a couple of packs and getting that. Hey, he probably made out like a bandit on that deal when all is said and done, but I don't care. I know I'm going to want the whole set by the end, so I'm happy about it. It's always cool to run into a Redditor anyway and get to swap them something.
Yeah, and I'm usually a little more generous in my trades when it's somebody who I interact with outside of the app itself.
Yeah, me too.
I'm usually less cutthroat.
All right, well, so we've talked about that. We've talked about vintage. Let's talk fan questions. We actually got a couple this week, and then we will wrap with a couple of contest things and reading some analysis from the fans. So we got 3 questions, all from the same guy. His name in-game is Ramper Sandy. And here, okay, question number 1. Do you want a Wilro Hood card?
Yes.
Easy answer. I'm going to be embarrassed, I guess, but I had to look that one up. That was, I guess, too deep of a cut even for me. I had to find out who the hell that was.
I only recently found out who he is because, and maybe this is the same guy. I didn't do my research here, but someone had done a mock-up of it was like right when Bespin came out, and they did a mock-up of like a Bespin card with him running with his ice cream maker, and I didn't know his name. I obviously I kind of recognized the image and stuff, but I never knew that was a thing. I think there's an action figure. When I looked it up, unless that's also a mock-up. If it was a really good one, or a custom. But yeah, it's funny that guy's got a whole story. I never knew he did until like a week ago.
Yeah, I saw that card too, and I just was like, I kind of shrugged it off, like, oh, it's some kind of joke or whatever. And then when I looked him up today, I was like, hey, it's that guy. I think they have to now. It's going to be one of those things where people are going to be like, what? Make him the award for Bespin, and people will lose it.
Oh my God,
they'll go nuts. Oh, man.
Mean, people were going crazy over Squidhead. And not even just the fact that they called it Squidhead instead of Quarren, but people were just like, really? This is the most obscure, not obscure, but just, least important character. Why is this guy on a mint? And then I wrote up a little thing because I actually really like it. But yeah, I mean, imagine if they did a Wilro Hood card
That would
award.
be awesome. I don't understand. There's so many people who seem like they just want every card to be one of the 10 main characters, and that's it. Don't bother with anybody else. Like, yeah, Squidhead is a pretty deep cut or whatever, but who cares? They can make as many mints as they want. They'll get around to everybody. This app is going to be around for plenty of time for them to get through everybody, and then probably guys from, like, Star Wars Legends, and people on the sub are talking about doing a set for the comic series, which would be great.
Yeah, comic book covers, real quick, would just be so cool. Similar to what everybody's hoping for sometime is the movie posters. But yeah, so many great options out there.
All right, so question number 2. I'm going to say yes to that too. Who doesn't want Wilro Hood? That's nuts. Question number 2. What is your favorite type of cookie?
All right, so I'm going to admit that my favorite type of cookie is not the best. I don't consider it the best kind of cookie, but it's mostly out of nostalgia and just like that flavor memory. But my favorite cookie is the samosa from the Girl Scout cookies, the one that's got coconut and like caramel in it. That's my favorite. And I can acknowledge that it's not the best cookie. It's not that amazing of a cookie, but I just love eating those things. They're every time the Girl Scouts come around, I'm buying those. How about you?
I'm lame. I'm Snickerdoodle. I just love cinnamon and sugar.
Nice.
That's mine. I don't have any reason for it. Although they used to give those out with my school lunches a lot of times when I was in middle school, so maybe that's it. Maybe I have some weird implanted memory from a simpler time.
Well, smell and taste are powerful memory triggers, you know? I mean, I want someone to make, this is a total tangent here, but I would love it if Yankee Candle would make action figures, like Star Wars action figure Yankee Candle. That would be my ultimate dream, because that smell, and they don't hold up. They don't still smell like that really anymore. I have some, and they don't really have that smell. But that is such a distinct, unique memory smell that was very specific to a certain point in my life, and I would love a Yankee Candle Star Wars action figure.
Yeah, that smell was probably caused by chemicals that they deemed horrible for you to breathe in at some point in the past 20, 30 years. All right, so the third question. This is the long one. He says, I'm starting to write a Star Wars audio drama, kind of like Smuggler's Gambit seen at Celebration 6 and Smuggler's Bounty at Celebration Anaheim. I'm creating a whole new cast of characters with a whole new adventure. What would you name one of the characters, and what species would they be? This is a tough one.
Yeah, and I meant to pre-answer this before we started recording, and now I don't have an answer. It would probably be, I would probably want it to be a Skywalker. I would want it to be a Skywalker, like a relative of like a child of Luke, or a Solo, like a child of Han and Leia. So I mean, I guess it would be human. I don't know what the first name. Obviously, the characters that were created in the expanded universe, those seem to be gone from canon now. And it was like Jason and I forget their names, but that goes back to the Timothy Zahn books. So maybe introducing some of these Skywalkers and Solos into the canon.
Okay, here's my guy. I didn't put too much thought into this. This could be nonsense. His name is Skolo Flarn. He's an Ithorian merchant who is trying to get to Mon Cala from Coruscant, but he got waylaid on Dantooine, and now he's just hanging out looking for a ride off-world. That's it. That's my whole guy.
Nice. He's got a little story. The Ithorians, is that the Hammerhead? Or
yeah.
What are the Ithorians? That's the Hammerhead.
You are correct. That is the one. Right. I always think of them from Knights of the Old Republic, because they had a very distinct voice clip for their weird language that was just like 15 seconds that played on a loop, basically, anytime you had dialogue with one of them. So they were like, Delpha, doifi don Delpha, over and over and over again, whatever it was. They only could afford like 15 seconds of time for some guy to make up that language for the game.
We should do an episode where we talk other Star Wars games at some point. I was a huge Rogue Squadron fan.
Some people are saying, we casually mentioned, maybe we should just add a bunch of Star Wars talk. And there were a bunch of people on the sub, and I got a couple one-to-ones that were like, just do a second podcast where you just talk about Star Wars stuff. And I thought, I would do that. I would do 2 shows with you. We'll just split it up.
Yeah, we should.
We'll think about this. If everybody gets in the sends us a bunch of emails or something, tradefederationpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know. We might do it. Okay, so moving on. Last week we had a contest, and we've got a bunch of people who answered the question and gave us some feedback on the trade that we asked about. Do you have one primed up? We're going to read some people's responses here on the air.
So the answer to the question being, what did I trade on Vintage Thursday, the day the card was released? What did I trade my Vintage Luke for? And again, as a reminder, it was just shortly after they pulled Vintage Luke from the chase. And the answer was I traded it for a Vintage Jawa and a Han quote, the first quote. So the first bit of analysis is from Brent Carul, who turns out is the one who edits the subreddit page that has the real world values. So what's up, Brent? So he says, I think this was a good trade for you. Vintage Luke held its value this week and did not see the next week drop that happens to a lot of cards. So a 1-to-1 for Vintage Jawa would have been a bad deal, but the Han quote puts it squarely in your favor given that it is the first card in a very popular set. The value on that card is rising and will continue to rise. Who knows if Vintage Luke will become a hot card down the line, similar to the Hoth Resurgence, but for today, it looks like a good trade.
Nice. I've got a little analysis here from Jacob Siegel. That's his in-game name. He says, a fine trade, regardless of the passage of time. Non-eligibility for the Marathon Award will be irrelevant eventually. It's still part of the set for completionists. If the guy came back asking to reverse the trade, it would have been honorable to do so, but I'm sure he was aware of what he was doing. The Jawa card must have been a dupe, and the quote was just bonus because he really wanted the trade. I think I agree with that.
Yeah, so far I agree with those two. Here's another one from Ali Khalaf, and he says, was it smart? Definitely. But is it less than what it was worth before the announcement? Yes. I personally got a Vintage Tarkin 1-to-1 for my Vintage Luke. This was before the announcement. So I'm a little jealous of Ali Khalaf in his Vintage Tarkin, but I also would agree with that one.
Yeah, next up, we have... Oh, he doesn't have his fan name on here. This is just Sean. I won't give his last name out. That seems weird. He said, during all the frenzy, I managed to trade my dupe Vintage Luke for a Greedo bounty, probably at almost exactly the same time you traded yours, Bill. Looks like the Luke is holding a bit of value and is probably about equal to a Vintage Jawa in trade. I think this card might be an indicator of how much value Vintage cards will have after the Marathon is complete. It seems to be settling around half of where it might otherwise be if it was in the Marathon. Could that be an indicator of what will happen to the value of Vintage cards in Week 11 or Week 31? Just some thoughts.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about where that card would be right now if it was still in the chase. It'd be again, I said this the first time, it would rival Tarkin. I think it would, and now that so much time has gone by, I actually think it would have surpassed Tarkin, because Tarkin seems to have leveled off and kind of dipped back down in terms of demand. I don't see as much demand for the Tarkin anymore. But yeah, I think that's all I got for fan analysis.
I've got one more. This is the one I wanted to finish on if you're done. This is from Darth Hippie. He says, Bill traded for a Vintage Jawa in the first Han quote. Obviously, you should have posted in the fan feed about 1,000 times that you would trade for a Vintage Han, but I think you came out all right. Pretty even trade, if you ask me.
Yeah, the whole lowball thing is almost becoming a meme at this point. In fact, the Redditors have come up with their own sort of call out that is a sort of poking fun of Come Strong, which is, you wanna say it?
Yeah, it's bring the heat. which I just love. It's my
Bring the
favorite.
heat.
Oh man. Every time I see that in the feed, I just want to give them whatever they're looking for. So it's secret. It's like a reverse psychology or something for me.
It's funny too because it's supposed to be like this thing that lets you identify the other Redditors, but all the Redditors have the cool custom Reddit Star Wars trader logos or whatever you call it, the avatars. So it's funny because every time I see it, I'm like, yep, another Redditor, and then I look and it's got they have the custom Reddit logo.
I'm definitely going to start taking a screen grab of any time anyone says bring the heat and uploading it to our Instagram. Our Instagram is at Trade Federation Podcast. If anybody wants to follow that, I've pretty much just been taking pictures of ridiculous things that people say in the fan feed. Sometimes I think people start to get a little desperate or something, and they will just post hilarious things in there. So whenever I see it, I grab it. And now I'm just going to start grabbing it anytime someone says bring the heat. So maybe you'll be Instagram famous if everybody keeps that up.
Yeah, I love where you're going with the Instagram. It's great.
Oh, I would like it to get to the point where people were saying ridiculous things just in the hope that I would see it and take a picture of it and put it on there. Like it became a little badge of honor, like a contest among people. Hey, can we get his attention saying something ridiculous? Well, okay, so I think it's time to announce the winner. I will give that illustrious honor to you, my friend.
The winner of the first Han quote and second Han quote, right? The Fuzzball?
Fuzzball.
Is fan name Jacob Seagull. Jacob Seagull. Fan name Jacob Seagull. So congratulations, Jacob Seagull. And we will contact you in the app at some point after the show airs.
Yep, and you'll be getting those from us. You'll have to give up a couple of 21Bs or something to get those. I'm sure that'll be really heartbreaking for you.
Yeah, one card will come from me and one card will come from Joe. That's why it'll be 2 trades.
Yeah, so awesome. Hopefully you don't have them already, but if you do, I'm sure you can trade them out to something. There's probably a bunch of other people on the or who listen to the show who are looking for it anyway. So hey, pay it forward or something if you want, or just make a bunch of extra cards off of it.
Yeah, that first Han quote is definitely a highly sought after card. It's trading really well.
I seem to have a bad habit of trading things about 4 days before they are just super hot. And then I regret it every time. I had all the Topps choices. I had all the quotes. Ugh, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I do enough complaining about it already to you.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up for this week?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, everybody can remember to email the show. I've mentioned a couple of these things. TradeFederationPodcast@gmail.com. Our Instagram, again, is @TradeFederationPodcast. You can follow us on Twitter @TradeFedCast. There's a bunch of places you can find us. Keep those reader or listener questions coming. I actually quite like answering some of those on the show. We can dedicate some time to it every week if people have them. I'll do it all the time. We could just do a whole show of mailbag. I'd be okay with that.
Totally. And we should be having some guests coming up. We won't say who they are yet, but we're trying to line up some guests to have on the show, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, some experts and whatnot. So look forward to that coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, if things pay off the way we are hoping, then a week from when you're hearing this episode is going to be a real treat, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, everybody look forward to that. I think that's it for us. Until next time, everybody, happy trading.
Happy hunting.